Welcome to the weekly rundown. Today is actually the 1 year anniversary to the creation of Silent Majority Posting, so I'm glad it lines up well with one of my podcast episodes. We have a very interesting discussion planned, and I'm excited to dive in today. I'm joined for a second straight week by my friend Nicole.
Hey, I'm Nicole. If you missed our podcast last week, you should check it out. We have a great discussion on what's been going on with Afghanistan, with the Taliban taking over.
Oh yeah, I think it was a great podcast and probably the best so far. I'm also joined today by the other co-host of that podcast, my lovely girlfriend Sarah.
Hi, I'm excited to discuss everything that we're about to talk about today.
Yeah, should be a good conversation. I'm really excited to dive in. Today we'll be doing an episode that I know Nicole has been asking me to do since I really started this podcast, and that is the COVID special.
Oh yeah, for about a year and a half now I've been talking about nothing but COVID, and I've been so critical about how everything's been handled the past year and a half, so I cannot wait to express my opinion on those.
Oh yeah, and this is probably a conversation that you'll probably lead where, I definitely want to, I know some things about the pandemic, and I know some statistics and this and that, but I definitely want to hear your point of view on it, just because I know that you've been studying this. And
oh yeah, been up to date for sure. Yeah.
So this should definitely be an interesting conversation. Before we start, I'd like to ask you to like and subscribe if you guys enjoy the podcast and our other segments, and let's dive right in. So our first story is the remaining hesitancy to go out and get vaccinated after the FDA had approved Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine this week. We're pulling up an article from the Washington Post titled, "Still Not Planning to Get It. FDA Approval Not Swaying Some Vaccine Holdouts."
I wonder why.
So the article starts off by highlighting a guy named...
No jabs.
Nope. Yeah, we'll pull up the picture of the guy fighting against the vaccine mandates, but... So it starts off by highlighting a guy named Chris Brummett. He says that for 5 months he ignored his wife's pleas that he should get a coronavirus vaccine. He cares even less that federal regulators finally issued a long-awaited approval for one of them. He says that, "My wife is on me all the time to do it." He's from Jackson County in Indiana, and he followed news this week of the FDA and Drug Administration's approval of Pfizer Biotech's coronavirus vaccine. So, to me, this seems like there's a lack of trust in the FDA.
I feel like there's a lot of lack of trust in a lot of government organizations, because it says right there, it says he's a libertarian who's critical of both the Biden and Trump administrations. And honestly, I feel kind of similar in the way, because I feel like I remember one time we talked about that one guy, Snowden, who showed all the distrust in the government.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I know people are different, but I am for the vaccine, but I don't feel like we should force it on people if they really don't want it. Because I got it, but if other people don't want it, I don't think we should force it. And I understand distrust with the government, because there's so many different things that show the distrust. I was asking you about the Hillary Clinton emails, and if she was going to be in office, it's whoa, we shouldn't trust her,
See, and I think that's a very similar viewpoint to many Republicans, where we can understand how this can improve a lot of people's lives, this vaccine can be helpful, and we should definitely get the vulnerable populations vaccinated, we should definitely get people who should get vaccinated, and you should ask your doctor whether or not you should get vaccinated, but for those people that the doctor says no to, for those people that choose by their own account, I'm obviously recommending go ask your medical professional, go ask somebody that you trust in the medical field. If they say no, you shouldn't be forced out of everything that you do. You shouldn't be, and that's very much
right. And you know what? The amount of distrust that we have is, in my opinion, very reasonable, because we had Fauci telling us all year last year, oh, the masks are okay, oh, the masks are not okay, oh, the vaccine is under Trump, oh, we're not really so sure, what Cuomo and Kamala has also said this as well. So it's just it's always been back and forth. Oh, masks work. No, they don't. Oh, double masking works. No, it doesn't. And it's how are we supposed to really trust you guys?
Exactly.
Double masking. I'm
the biggest problem. Stupid. The biggest problem with the vaccine, with COVID, is that it happened in an election year.
Yeah.
The biggest problem is that it became highly politicized.
Yep.
For absolutely no reason. We all wanted to get it checked out, and we should have stuck to our Constitution. We should have said, okay, we're not going to force anybody to lock down. These are recommendations that we're going to provide you.
Yeah, I have seen that. There was actually articles like that businesses in New York, like so many have failed because of the pandemic and like the forced like shutdowns and everything.
Yeah.
Especially like restaurants.
Yeah.
And what I liked about Trump is that he said it should just be up to the state and what they think they should regulate. That's one thing I highly respected,
exactly.
even though I wasn't a huge fan of him at the time.
Trump's job throughout the pandemic was to give the rights to the states, because every state is different and every state is going to handle it differently. And all he really needed to do was provide for these states, which he absolutely did. New York constantly said, we don't have enough stuff. But Trump was constantly delivering stuff to them. They deliver the Mercyhurst Hospital on the boat with one person entering it in its entirety of it being there. It was an entire hospital boat. It's a cruise liner, and it had housed one COVID patient because Cuomo refused to use it. Okay, these people created problems themselves.
Yeah, and they blamed it on, of course,
Exactly.
the scapegoat, Trump.
I mean, I don't think cruise liners are the best for like housing COVID patients.
Oh, not at all.
Like, I don't.
You need proper ventilation.
Yeah, I
you
don't
need to be
think-
outside.
I'm saying this was a hospital boat. This was a boat that was designed for housing people who are sick.
Yeah, like quarantining almost.
Exactly,
like keeping
quarantine
them
and having nurses
away from
on
nursing homes, you know,
Yes.
for example.
Yeah, it had nurses on staff, doctors on staff, people that can take care of you. It had everything that you could need. Drugs for handling coronavirus. It had this and that. So why did we not use it? Why did, when Trump offered the help to these places, why did they not use it?
Then again, though, like Cuomo and Trump, like butt heads like a lot. I do like there was something that I did see that he didn't provide like enough. Like New York had like some of the highest amount of cases at some point, and we had like some of the least amount of ventilators. So that was like a big problem.
But we got them the ventilators. Like,
Yeah, but it took like forever. Like it literally took like a long time.
Yeah, and wasn't there something about like not enough restock from the previous presidency with Obama with the swine flu?
yes.
I think that had
We
something
never
to do with it. Like they
replenished.
never replenished.
We were never able to replenish our, everything that we needed for COVID.
Yeah, so there's only so much that Trump can do. There's only so much that Cuomo can do, though. What he did at
Yes.
the nursing home obviously was stupid.
Exactly. It's all we can really do is judge how much can you do.
Right. And
So-
like the CDC shouldn't be dogging on us almost like, hey, do this, do this, do this. Okay, now we're going to make all these businesses say
Yep.
you can't go in without a mask. Like it's federally regulated, as they said.
Of course.
And it's just like, you're kind of going a little too far. Like, I feel like you guys should be more like Trump, where he's like, it should just be up to the state. We know it's a
Yes.
public health crisis, but we got vaccines now.
Mhm.
Why are we still talking about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, the other part of distrust with it is, yes, the constant going back and forth on these vaccines. When it was November, or even earlier than November last year with all of the debates, you're right, everybody was, every debate was, are you going to get the vaccine if Trump's in office? No, I'm not getting it. I don't trust that administration. If
Like, what
says
does
to
Trump
get it.
have to do with the making of the vaccine? Is he a
Exactly.
scientist? Like,
Exactly.
Like define. Yeah.
It's-
it was so stupid. It's childish.
And that speaks to people. That speaks to American voters. It's,
But it also, you could say the same thing with the Biden administration. Like, I don't like either. Like, I didn't like either, but, I mean, it's a vaccine. Like, you really gotta look at the doctors and health professionals, not really political
exactly.
people.
Exactly. And, that's kind of what we're saying, where this should not have been a choice by the government. This should not have been, authoritarian over.
The CDC should have just kept it as recommendations.
Well, yeah.
Wash your hands. That's actually more effective than wearing a mask because the virus can still
Yeah.
seep through with our disposables.
Something that I did think was weird, though, was once they, when they were, mandating masks, saying that they were, required and everything, I actually saw more people not wear them at my job. And now that they're saying, oh, we recommend it because the Delta variant, I've seen more people wear it
Yeah.
at my job. And I just think that's, an interesting thing. Because, when they required it, everyone's like, no, you can't require me to do anything. But now that they recommend it, they're like, okay.
And that's human
That
nature.
is interesting, yeah.
And that's human nature. People are going to go people are going to go with their best interests. People are going to go with things that they think are,
Right, if you feel like you're at risk,
you're
do
gonna wear a
so for
mask.
yourself.
Yeah. If you don't feel like you're at risk, you didn't wear a mask. And
Take that risk.
yeah, that's your risk to take. That's your choosing. And, it's kind of just, those people pretty much chose not to trust the government. And do you really blame them with all of the, it went from, no, you can't get the vaccine to, what I was saying about that point before was that it pressures people to vote for them because it's like, I want this pandemic over with, and if these people aren't going to allow me to have the vaccine, if Trump's in office, that's a problem. That's something that many voters can sway many voters, and that's something
I also feel like what you're saying, like you're making it more political than it should be. Like,
and so is the CDC.
Yeah, that's
like,
why.
yeah, the CDC definitely made it too political.
I'm just stating what politicians did. I'm stating that they said that if you don't vote for my side, I'm not going to trust these vaccines, and I'm not going to instill them in the state. I'm not going to put them in our state if Trump's in office. That very much scares people. That very much tells people, oh, you guys are going to be authoritarian dickheads if we don't vote for you.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make it political. I'm just telling you guys what they
Like what
did
some
and
people
what they
think.
said.
Yeah.
Like, they really said, we're not going to give you these vaccines if you don't vote for our party. That's what they said. That's not even me trying to make it political. That's, in every debate, that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
So it goes on to highlight another person, Tyler McCann, who's 24 out of Augusta, Georgia, who also remains skeptical. He cites the low risk of complications for people his age. He says, if I get it, I will blame myself entirely. It'll be my fault. But until then, I don't see the necessity. And with how politicized it's been, I'm just annoyed with it.
Oh, thank God.
I
Yep.
mean, I agree with that, but I think the biggest thing that annoys me is that people will get it, but they'll be very negligent of, like, taking, like, that's how, like, it spread in the first place. Like, people still went out and, like, did things. Like, that. It's just not something that you should go out. Like, I understand, like, not getting the vaccine, then you get COVID, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, and if you blame yourself for it, stay home.
Yeah.
Like, stay home, don't go out. But that's the reason why it spreads, is because people go out.
Yeah.
But I
see what you mean.
also think a big problem is, like, asymptomatic people going out and not knowing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so it's kind of like at this point where it's like we cannot really control.
Yeah.
Like, obviously these lockdowns have not worked. They
No.
really have not.
And I'm in the opinion that these lockdowns did more harm than good because
Well, because a lot of kids still went out and, like, did things, and so many people were, like, rebellious.
It's that, and then what happens when those kids have to go home? Those kids bring whatever germs they had outside into their homes where everybody is home. Where if they're living in an apartment complex, everybody is in that apartment complex, so everybody in that apartment complex is going to get COVID because you don't allow anybody out. You don't allow anybody to, stay the night at their friend's house, so that way the person carrying COVID isn't, in contact with you.
It's just a very difficult thing to, like, control everybody on, because there's, like, all the variants, there's the different symptoms.
Oh yeah, and I expected this too. This is how viruses work. They mutate, and that's why we get the flu shot every year, because they mutate when the new variants of every flu is being put in every single year.
And
Like,
the biggest issue
why.
with this, the biggest issue with that variant is the animals. This can go into animals, so it will always mutate. It will.
Yeah, I remember
Always.
when they said that, like, dogs and cats couldn't get it, but then all of a sudden they're like, oh, a dog just got COVID.
When I heard that dogs and cats can't get it, I was like, that sounds like bullshit. That
Yeah,
did
or
not
at least
seem-
not for now, until it mutates, because that's what happens.
Exactly. It didn't seem like it was right. I was very much worried about dogs catching COVID when
I think
we
there was
first
a
heard
deer that somebody hit,
Yes.
and they found COVID in it.
Yes.
Like,
These are why, and it's, if you're gonna start off with a story that it came from a bat, then it obviously has to be able to be transmissible to animals. It has to be.
eventually,
If your story is that it came from an animal, there's no way that it can't transmit to other animals.
Yeah.
You
Because
know?
every species is like different, but like genetic makeup, it's all very similar.
Well, yes, that, and it'll be a game of telephone. It'll mutate to the point where it can get to a dog because it'll go from a bat to a bird to a pigeon to a rat to a this to that
Yeah.
to this to that. You know, it's the ecosystem. Everything in the ecosystem gets eaten by another thing and then passes COVID. So if this rat had COVID and the bird eats the rat and then the bird, shits out something and something eats that shit, it's gonna have COVID. You know, it's
circle of life.
Yeah.
Let's go.
so, and that's how these viruses mutate. It's
Right, so like when they were freaking out about the new variant, it's just like, why are you guys freaking out about this? Because we already knew this was going to happen.
exactly
The vaccine can help people
somewhat.
somewhat. Now we're finding out that it kind of doesn't, for whatever reason.
It's
With the new variant, it doesn't really.
Yeah.
But like, if the old variant's still going around, like I think it can protect people from that.
pay attention to what Walensky says, the CDC director. Pay attention to what these people say because they tell you that these vaccines are not working as effectively as once believed.
Yeah.
They tell you all the time that, well, transmission isn't really as, it doesn't really slow transmission of the virus as much as we said, and it doesn't really even at all at this point.
Right.
It really, and it's, so why are you forcing these vaccine mandates? Why are you doing this and that if it's only helping
Right,
yourself?
like, oh god, I can talk all day about friggin' New York City, but...
So they also interviewed a guy named Mark Anthony Garcia from Ingleside, Texas, and he ponders new questions since the FDA's approval. If the vaccine's that good, why are we having breakthroughs?
Well, this is also some guy who like doesn't understand the variants.
Or how
Like,
science works,
yeah.
too, so I definitely
Yeah.
see...
Yeah,
But like, I can understand why, like, if you didn't know like how the virus or like how vaccines work, you could ask that, be like, why is this happening? Like, why are we still having so many cases? But there is reasons. It's like the mutation of the viruses.
okay, but
Right.
do you think the 24-year-old dude that we just talked about knows that much about Corona? Do you think the 43-year-old dude who's getting hounded by his wife knows that much? Like, yeah, they're just pulling up what people
Most
in America
people really don't know
Exactly.
in depth.
That is
Like,
also
I went to...
something I think we should do. Like, I feel like the news should honestly inform people more of how like it works,
Yes,
and
exactly.
that's why like people would stop.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
questioning it so
I am
much.
totally on board with
Yeah.
that. Like, I think more scientists should speak out
Like,
now.
I don't think politicians should be the ones like
This is the biggest
really
issue.
speaking out the most
Well,
Mhm.
it's not even
on
that.
how it
It's,
works.
the media does speak on it, but they politicize it. They make it so that way they label people who
Like,
don't.
convincing,
Yes.
take it, please.
Yes, it's
Why?
and the people who don't agree with them become far righters, become anti-vaxxers, become this and that, and that causes politicization. That causes a split in the middle where people are like, well, screw you for calling me this, for not wanting to take an experimental drug. It's when you see Arnold Schwarzenegger's video last week,
Yeah.
it's most people don't agree with that, but there is another group that highly does agree with that. There is a group that says, screw your freedoms, we need to give up all of our rights for the safety of
Everybody.
Everybody.
And you know what? They can say that with literally everybody. They really, with every little thing. Even
Mhm.
with, like, if you care about the safety of your obese person next door, why don't you prevent them from eating chips? And
Yes.
stop selling chips, stop selling all this bad
Exactly.
foods, desserts, whatever
And
that causes it.
that's my biggest
Yeah.
issue with politics, where we shouldn't say stop people from doing things because, people have free will. People have a right to say...
Right, and there's consequences with that, too.
Yes, exactly. And that's the beauty of the country, that you can experience consequences and actions. You can experience, if I do this, this will happen, and over time this will happen over time, That's beauty. That's something beautiful in this country, where you're accountable. You're held accountable for the things that you do, and I think that's good. I think it's good to say, because then the people that are doing good in life will get better. Will get better things because they're just doing good. They're doing better things in life.
Mm-hmm.
So let's continue. The article goes on to say federal officials have sought for months to persuade holdouts like Brummett, McCann, and Garcia, who are among the nearly 85 million still unvaccinated eligible Americans.
Oh, wow. That's kind of a lot.
Yeah, that is. Well, I'm one of them.
Very nice. A largely entrenched population despite a range of incentives, political appeals, and now mandates to get the shots. So when they're talking about the incentives, they're talking about when Bill de Blasio went on live TV and said you can get free fries if you
Yeah, I
Oh my
you
remember
get
god,
a
and then
shot.
they were saying like they'll give college kids like money for college. They'll
Yeah.
put them in a pool.
Like, I'm sorry, but why do federal officials care this much? To be completely honest, since they don't really care about our health and well-being in the first place, like they give us foods that have things that can cause cancer, you know, they provide that stuff with us without quite informing us. Like trans fats too can also be in our food still, even though legally you're not supposed to, but if you have less than 1 gram
Yep.
per serving in there, they don't. You can technically say, oh, 0 grams of trans fats, and trans fats doesn't leave your body; it stays in your arteries.
Yep.
So it's like they allow this stuff to happen. I'm sure they're well aware, and
no.
but you got to make money.
And now, who passes food in this country? Who makes sure that food can be sold in this country? What administration?
Okay. We know the answer, the FDA.
What-
We know the answer.
Okay,
Like,
so now what administration is also saying that vaccines are credible and healthy and safe?
Also, the FDA now, well, with Pfizer.
Okay.
yeah. I'm just like, I look at it though, like these are like government regulated, like.
Yes, and do you know where a good place for people who leave the FDA is to work at is? Pfizer. Pfizer hires a lot of former FDA officials. Big Pharma will hire these people in order to make sure that they're friendly with the people at the FDA in order to get vaccine approval. I'm not claiming this as, crazy conspiracy, but I'm saying it happens. This is something that,
Yeah, Pfizer actually funds a lot of stuff.
Exactly.
Like, even in the dairy industry,
Yes.
too. So it's just, and the dairy industry hasn't really been shown to be completely healthy for us.
Oh my
No.
god.
But-
you hear all that stuff about the dairy industry. Like I took
like,
a class.
pus is in your milk and stuff.
Yeah, and
but-
like the, what is it called?
Or, a legal amount of lead or
sometimes
fluoride
like in the
your
meat.
faucet
Exactly.
water.
There's like,
So what is there to say that the FDA is acting in our best interest by approving this vaccine?
On point. You're on point there. That's what I've been saying.
It's, we're seeing all of these problems associated with the FDA in many different platforms. So is it really that crazy to say that maybe they're a little bit off term on this?
Right, or maybe they're not fully educated, or maybe they make mistakes. Like, maybe they're not doing this on purpose. Maybe they are just simply making mistakes that are a big deal. Because now people are like, oh, now that the FDA approved it, let's go get it. Now I can trust this. But the FDA hasn't really been shown to be so trustful. And it may or may not be their fault. There could be corrupt people, or there could be people that just didn't know.
See, now, this raises me to another question where say another government agency like NASA, when they messed up, what did we do? Did we ignore it, or did we try to make them better? Did we just say, screw it, they blew up a rocket that was billions of dollars of taxpayer money, or did we say, okay, let's try and fix this so that way we can get rockets to the moon? We need to hold these firms accountable. We need to hold these associations
Right, especially if
accountable.
we're the ones funding them.
Exactly. And exactly, if we're paying all of this money every year to ensure that you guys are making everything safe for us, we want to make sure you're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that you're not blowing up rockets.
Yeah, like also when I put money
Figuratively.
into my own stocks and stuff, like I can actually make decisions for the company.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
you're
it's just
buying into
because-
ownership.
Yeah.
And that's all we're asking is for the FDA to do a good job and be held accountable when they're not doing a good job. And they haven't been doing that great of a job.
Yeah. Do you know if the FDA approved that syphilis thing with the Tuskegee experiment, I think it was? Do you know about that?
I know about the I know what you're talking about.
I think they approved the study to go on, but I'm not too sure.
Probably.
I need to like really look into that. But if that's the case, because that's what my black friends have been telling me, like Tatiana from work, she would tell me about like why would we trust them when they gave black men, poor black men, syphilis.
Yep.
And we apologized like 50 years later or something under Clinton, I think.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But it's just like, you know, why would we trust you guys? Because if you did it before, it's very likely you guys might just do it again. And this could be something similar.
Very much so. And we're seeing, you know, we've seen throughout time that there's that many of these platforms, many of these left-wing services tend to have racist ideology inside of them. It has, maybe not by choice, but you know, it.
But it shows in history.
Yeah, it always. A lot of times, you know, medical services tend to be racist. Medical services
and sexist too. There's a lot of things with women as well.
Oh yeah. So, the FDA's approval increased the likelihood of getting vaccinated, said Derek M., a 27-year-old who just left active duty military service and, like several, spoke with the Washington Post on the condition of anonymity for fear he might be harassed. But at this time, I'm still not planning to get it. Yes, exactly. It's whoever trusts the FDA will say, okay, this is what I've been waiting for, I'm going to go get it. You know, and I have a feeling that we will see a rise in COVID vaccines. It's not going to deter people who are already hesitant about it and hesitant about FDA's leadership, CDC's leadership.
Right, like that's the root of the cause. And honestly, Pfizer, who would really support that when they fund so many things for big companies to say, like, hey, get Pfizer, get vaccinated, and then they show, like, Pfizer, you know, so it's just...
This week they bought a $2.6 billion company in Canada. It's a drug company called Trillium. $2.6 billion. That on the same exact day that they got full vaccine approval.
Yep.
They had a very big Tuesday.
Yeah, they sure did. Oh, I've always been a huge critic of Big Pharma and how this does not help people. And that's what's always made me furious. Even when I was a liberal, this made me extremely furious towards the FDA.
Yeah. It's... People either need to hold them accountable or not listen to the FDA, not listen to what they're saying, because if you don't trust them, it's either make them better or you get rid of it, you know, and you just choose not to listen. It's terrible. So, I think we're going to go into our next article about employers. Well,
I got something to say about that.
Yeah.
Micah, I have a coworker who was expressing his concern to me about this, actually, about employers requiring the vaccine. His mother doesn't want to get the vaccine, and he said they're about to lay her off. And she said that she's not going to be able to get as good of a job, and she's going to have to work 2 part-time jobs, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Like...
That's really sad.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely...
And I think
like
New York
so
made
good
it
at
to
your
where
job.
that you can't use a religious exemption.
Yep.
Like...
No exemptions in the state of New York. Not even Guillain-Barré syndrome, which we talked about a week ago. They're not accepting that as a reason. It's like, you're putting out thousands of people who just cannot get the vaccine.
Like that, I understand that they want everybody to be like safe in a workplace and not have to worry about the spread of COVID, but it's also like people shouldn't have to worry to lose their job.
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like that's just so much of a... I think that's some of the biggest stress you can put on somebody. I think a job is the biggest thing. I feel like they say that people who don't have enough money are like the most depressed like people.
Yep.
to like.
Yeah,
That
and
makes sense.
it's honestly what I've learned in school with ethics and stuff. It's actually highly unethical to expect people that like are poor, for example, to bribe them with money. Like, hey, you can win $1,000 if you take this vaccine. Like,
Yep.
why are you pushing it so much then?
Mhm.
Because this is going to get those kind of people who are vulnerable to those situations to go get it. Or if a homeless person is hungry and said, hey, free hot dogs if you get the vaccine, so of course he's going to go get it. And it's like, which is fine to get the vaccine to protect yourself in any way, shape, or form. Wear a mask if you want to protect yourself, sure. But for the government to kind of push it like this is concerning. Why would we trust that? But no, we're seen as evil people, anti-vaxxers. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I'm not taking this vaccine until I need it, like when I'm 50.
Exactly. It furthers wealth distribution, wealth inequality, because we're seeing, based on polls and statistics, that the most hesitant groups nowadays are the groups that are highly educated. The Columbia grad students are the ones that are most likely to be hesitant of getting the vaccine. The people who have, these multimillionaires are the most hesitant to get the vaccine. Why are we seeing that? Why are we seeing that the people who have access to the most amount of information...
I was just about to say that. I feel like they have the most information.
Yeah. Why are we seeing that the people who have most access to information are the ones that are most likely to say, no, I don't want to get the vaccine?
Right, and you know what another thing is? Like, why are you forcing people like nurses, for example, to get the vaccine even if they don't want to? There's nurses that are like, I worked throughout this entire pandemic without a vaccine. I don't want to get the vaccine right now, but it's costing their jobs.
They turned from heroes to villains.
Delta is like actually requiring. When I was looking through articles, I found one. I think it was from CNN that Delta is actually requiring $200 from their employees. I think monthly. I don't even know, but that's still ridiculous. Just in case they have to pay for their medical bills when they get COVID. And it's like, what?
Another thing with that, it's a lot of companies give you the option of either COVID, get the shot, or get tested every week.
Yeah.
Now, an issue that I have with that is that we have just made it so that way testing is no longer free.
That is true.
So,
Is it
if
not?
Well, it's not anymore.
Yeah, it's no longer free to get tested. So they're pretty much giving you an option.
Wow.
Either pay every day, pay weekly for a COVID test, or get the vaccine.
Something that I question is, like, do you guys remember when, like, in the media, there were, like, moms who were, like, anti-vaxxers? This was before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like it causes autism.
Yes. What happened with that? Like, people didn't get forced into, like, the vaccines. We just kind of, like, made fun of them, I feel like. We were just kind of, like...
Exactly.
Like, I feel like...
And the only places that really mandated were if you work in
like
the healthcare
schools,
field
too.
or school, universities. And I feel like businesses should have every right to want certain requirements. But I think it's become popular to force everybody to get this.
Yes, exactly. And that's what's so scary to a lot of people.
Yeah, and businesses themselves, because it's like, oh, if I don't require this, I'm going to get flashback. Just like how the governor of Florida is getting flashback from like the White House, not just Biden, but Jen Psaki or whatever her name is. Yeah, like he's getting flashback for doing his own thing in his own state. Like, why do you care?
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's and it's just Biden said in many tweets last year, this president has no plan. We're seeing Biden has no plan. This is not a plan. This is absolutely COVID.
I feel
is not
like
fixed.
they just don't. Well, I feel like you can't really make that argument because I feel like with both, I feel like neither of them really had a plan because like they just thought, oh, let's vaccine, like this will all be over with.
But I'm saying one campaigned on the fact that he had a plan that was much better
I
than
can't
you
agree with that. He did say that a lot, but like I'm just saying, I feel like how do you accurately plan for something like this?
Exactly.
Well,
yeah, I see where you're coming from.
He had a year longer than Donald Trump had planned for this pandemic.
That is true.
I'm just saying, if you're going to boast about your big plan, let's see it. Let's see this great plan that you have. For
Yeah,
the
so
country.
it's so funny that COVID cases are rising, and it's like, oh, Biden, what's your
Yep.
plan
Yeah.
to have everybody from Mexico come into the United States
Exactly.
unvaccinated, probably, or carrying COVID themselves?
They do
But
say
no,
that
that's
the
what
levels
happened.
are high in those people.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Because
but-
we don't test them. We just
Yeah.
allow them across our border. We don't give them a COVID test. We don't give them any kind of.
And they're kept in such a fine area. I think they're not really. Are they still in cages and stuff like that right now? Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, so I haven't been keeping up with the
I
border.
haven't either.
Remember when
But-
Biden said there would be no more kids in cages under his administration?
Aw.
Do you guys remember that?
It's
Because
a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what he does. He's a career politician. He will
Mhm.
consistently lie to you.
Yeah.
If he's been in office for 40 years, which, by the way, I believe in short-term limits, so I don't even think he should have been there for as long.
No.
But he's been there for so long, you'd think that America would be perfect by now if that was the case. So why elect somebody who hasn't done anything for us?
My other question is, he pretty much was at his peak in '92 when he ran. We see where he was at this year when he ran for president.
Yeah.
If we hated him back then,
They sure did, too.
Well, I also
Why?
feel like so many people dropped out of the Democratic race as well, and I was like,
forced out, but
Forced out, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can talk. I mean, at the time, I was rooting for Bernie, and yet, for some reason, Bernie was up there. All of a sudden, Joe Biden spiked. The DNC just seems to like certain Democrats over others.
You know what's crazy? They put
maybe the
up.
more vulnerable ones.
Yeah.
You know how that happened? The Democratic Party decided to do the same exact ads that they do against Trump.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, Bernie is flopping like fish because nobody likes him anymore because you're going to do this shit. You're going to say, oh, he's racist and pull out videos and context. You're going to say all of this stuff. And it's like, yeah, this is what the party does. They just call everybody racist that they don't agree with. They point out any little thing that could be words.
Right, it's
not even-
childish, honestly,
Exactly.
in my opinion. If you did something in the past 20 years ago, why? why do we care? Why do we... I don't get it.
They
I really
do
don't.
it because people listen.
I understand if it's like
People-
incriminating though, like if it's like they murdered somebody, like but never got caught.
Right.
But like that's, I feel like some things are different.
Right. Like, if they said something offensive, like, people can't even be funny anymore. Like, comedy really cannot be a thing anymore.
Comedians get canceled nowadays, and it's like
Yeah.
the whole
For something they did years ago, too.
and the whole
Oh,
point
cancel
of
culture is
comedy.
so like huge.
Disgusting. Maybe that can be our next topic.
Yeah.
For sure.
The whole point of a comedian is to say shit that you wouldn't say. Is to say stuff that, you know, is just is funny to think about this stuff. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean exactly what you say. Comedians lie all the time. It's the point of their jokes. They're supposed to exaggerate things. They're supposed to make things crazy because that's what gets people to laugh. People,
And that's what gets them in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's dark stuff too. Dark humor is huge because everybody likes dark humor. Everybody
I
likes.
love
yeah.
dark humor. If you don't, then
Exactly.
just
No,
go
it's
somewhere
just-
else.
Just
it's
go find a different comedian.
Yeah.
by nature. That's why we see so many comedians act the way that they do because it's like that's what works. That's what people like. That's the type of comedy that people enjoy. You know, so it's how are we going to get mad at them for doing their job? How are we going to get mad at them for making jokes?
Right, like, there's a difference between calling threats on people,
Yeah.
and there's another way of, like, joking. Even if it's, like, misogynistic or racist, whatever you want to call it, if you don't like it, don't listen to him. The less people that listen to him or her, the less business that person has. Just like any business. If a business supports, let's just say Black Lives Matter, if you really hate Black Lives Matter so much, stop going to that business.
Yeah. Exactly. And
Yeah.
in ways, cancel culture is trying to shape what we're allowed to see, what we're allowed to hear, and it's like, stop doing that. Stop.
Or what we call misinformation or not. Like, I'm sorry, opinions will probably always be misinformation.
I always, when I see something missing context or something on a fact check, like a fact checker doing, you know, when I go
Oh,
through
yeah.
Instagram and I see a fact check little note.
Facebook is
I
really bad.
always click it just to see what they're talking about, and it's always out of context for the fact. The fact check is always out of context. It's always, okay, you're not really getting the joke. You're not really like, yes, we know that this may not be true, but like you'll fact check it, and it's only on Republican stuff, and it's like it's very obvious.
Yeah.
Where your opinions are.
It's like clearly you guys are friggin' offended, and it's just like, please go somewhere else. If you don't like my post, whatever. Unless we have a social media where everything on here has to be true, no opinions, just facts only. Nobody's gonna want to do that. Nobody wants to be on that.
And that's never been, there are court proceedings that make these social media platforms social squares where people are talking about, people are allowed to talk, and people are allowed to share what they feel.
Except when you ban stuff like Parlor and stuff like that, then it's like, kind of tells me something, like maybe you guys don't want free speech.
Exactly. It deters free speech. It creates problems with free speech where there shouldn't be. It's very simple to say you can say what you want within reason as long as you're following the law and not threatening anybody, threatening violence on any building. As long as you're following the First Amendment, you should be allowed to speak. Mm-hmm. You're not...
even if it's stupid, even if it is false information or conspiracy theories,
because
who cares?
It's kind of like Bigfoot. I feel like everyone talks about Bigfoot, but we don't know anything. I don't know, I just thought I'd throw that in there to be funny.
Yeah, but it's creating problems. You don't stop an idea that you disagree with by stopping them from talking. You don't shut people up. You show them the errors in their ways. You show them through statistics and through evidence and through, hard information that they might be wrong, that they might be a little bit out of touch on something. So, that's what you have to do. You can't just shut people up and force people off of platforms because you don't agree with their sentiment. Allow that person to get a bunch of mean tweets.
And it's like, you know what? If you're surrounded by people that are constantly saying false information, like I think in the article before, like he said something that was a little false, like how are we supposed to trust it?
With
the vaccines. Yep. And it's just like you could educate yourself too. You do know that. Like you can look stuff up on your own. You can even read a biology book like I've been doing for the past 4 years. And it's just like you can see like, oh yeah, this is how this works and this is why sometimes this doesn't work or or take a few classes if you're really that passionate to know more about
exactly.
And I feel like it's the same with everything else though. Like you could educate yourself on like almost anything.
Literally anything, yeah.
You just have to make sure you have the right information.
It just goes to show that people don't care enough. That people don't care enough about our freedoms. They'll accept whatever the government says and whatever the CDC says and do whatever that says.
Big point there.
I feel like they'll try like the easy way. Like they'll believe what they hear.
They just don't care enough.
It's convenient.
Exactly. They don't care enough about, they don't think in the long term. They don't think in the term of, will this still be around in 5 years where they're, doing all of these lockdowns, where they're forcing all these vaccines, forcing all of these masks? Are we just going to give in for the next 5, 10, 20, 40 years?
Right. Like, if you keep letting them do stuff for you, they're just going to keep going and going and pushing the limits and stuff.
You have to care. And if you are passionate about vaccines and mandates, get passionate about it and know your facts and make sure that you're not just spewing misinformation. And this is the same with vice versa. If you're against the vaccines, if you're, this and that, be informed. Understand what you're talking about, understand what point you're making. Because it's important. We want the best way to move as a country is good ideas. The best way to, and if you can filter out those bad ideas through facts and knowledge and information, that is our best way forward.
Right. And there's plenty of blame on both sides of the political spectrum too with that stuff, So we should do less of trusting people like the CDC and stuff, just blindly listening to what they're saying, because there can always be corrupt people. I'm not saying that there are right now, though I kind of think there are. But there's always going to be some sort of corrupt people that will always be out for your money and not for your best interest. Always. That's just how it works. And it's like we should stop just listening to whatever the government tells us and maybe actually look into the science yourself.
It's also look into what part the government had to do with what you're in right now. It's, okay, I lost my job, I lost my house, I lost this and that. Why? Okay, maybe I shouldn't have been locked down in my home. Maybe I should have been able to keep my business open. Maybe I should have been able to do this or that. And it's like, wake up.
Yeah.
Get mad. You know, my family, we run a small business, and my dad stayed open the entire time without enforcing without enforcing mandates, without enforcing mask mandates, without enforcing this
Good.
and that. And
High respect.
never got sick, went into work every single day, made sales, kept his business afloat. Was able to sell it actually this year because, you know, he did very well, and he made sure to still, you know, work, because it's up to you. It's up to you what you want to do in life. If you want to sit back and just trust the CDC and trust that they'll handle everything.
And just blindly be like, yeah, we'll listen to the governor and keep everything closed and local businesses just go down the drain. I think they said a third of New York City local businesses are permanently closed forever. And I remember going to New York City and everywhere there was a local business, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it's like, now I can't imagine going back. I went in 2019, mind you, like late 2019. I can't imagine going back.
There were all of these videos of Times Square being completely empty.
That's sad.
If you've been, I remember when you went to the city, you know, because we were working at that time, and you were sending pictures, and there were people. There were tons of people.
And that's so important for human nature. It really is.
Exactly.
For
and
kids, especially.
Yeah. And that's, you know, we'll talk more about that when we get to the education part of this, but kids need to be in an environment where they can socialize and learn and this and that, and we've held that back from them. And we are still for homeschooling, but you can't homeschool your kid under short notice. You can't just randomly, you know, bring your kid at home and then everything's going to work out, because it's not. You know, you have no time to plan. You have no time to...
Right, and how are they making friends? How are they being with friends? And especially if parents are like, no, we don't want you getting COVID. You can't hang around with your friends.
Yeah. And
even with college, I transferred schools right when COVID hit. I had no friends. Literally none. It was the worst.
That's horrible.
It is so hard to make friends.
And everybody wants a 6-foot bubble, so you can't come up to a person and talk to them. It must have been very tough for people who had to be in person and for people who had to be home. I had to be home the entire both semesters.
Yeah, and you know what? I would get a little personal here too. Like my family hasn't really been the best. Like my parents, the living situation. My grandfather was actually in the process of dying due to cancer, so we had him over. So there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of drug use, again, because obviously everybody's stressed, and of course everybody went back to their addictions. And so I was just like, you know what, I gotta leave, because I can't be stuck here. It was like even a few weeks after, like I had to leave college to go back home and do everything from home, while my grandfather was dying, so I was constantly in that environment. I couldn't go to any libraries to focus on my stuff. My parents were honestly kind of terrible at the time with their marriage, and obviously my mom, with her father passing away, she's not doing okay. Addiction started again. And so I was like, you know what, I just gotta leave. I left like in June of that year, or no, April. I left because I'm just like, I can't do anything here.
Because you put that on yourself too.
Domestic violence has risen with these lockdowns.
Exactly.
Scary.
It's
so scary.
And it's obvious problems with forcing people at home 24/7 with other people. You can only get so much of people. That's a common trope.
Yeah, and it works for some. It doesn't work for most. It really doesn't.
It's, as much as you love people and as much as you care about people, it is sometimes difficult to be on with them in the same room for 24 hours a day. Look at the New York City apartments. If you're living in a studio with your, you know, significant other, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, you have one room with one person. It's like solitaire. Solitaire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also feel like school and like college were the ways that people could like sometimes escape their like home stresses
Exactly.
and everything, like kind of like what Nicole was talking about with everything.
then there are restrictions on the way that people can act. There are restrictions on the way that people can talk to you. You can't, just blatantly curse out a teacher, and the teacher can't blatantly curse out you.
Yeah.
Whereas at home, it's very possible that you're getting cursed out by your parents every single day. It's very possible that
But
your
you also
parents are
get to
hitting you.
see like your friends at school
Exactly.
and like.
It's a relief from stress. It's a way.
Oh yeah, the school was the way to go for me. Like I loved it even as a kid.
It works for the kid, but it also works for the parent because it's a daycare service. It's
Absolutely, yeah.
It says, okay, my kids are going to be at school for this amount of time. There are after-school programs. There's sports. There's this and that. I can go to work, come home, pick up my kid, and everything's fine. Somebody is there to take care of my kid. When you're forced to stay home, that caused a lot of other people to lose their jobs. Caused a lot more economic strife because it's like somebody's got to take care of it. We can't afford daycare.
Yeah, and this was a big problem with my managers who have young kids, and they're like, I not that we were kind of essential workers, so they had to work. But then it's like, so were their husbands, and it's like, so it's just like, who's going to take care of the kid? The kid is always at home, and it's like they have to do school at home, and people like my sister, who was like 12, 13 at the time, she was declining rapidly in school because she didn't enjoy school, and what made her enjoy school was the people around her, and she was just declining rapidly in her grades, and that wasn't just her, it was most kids.
See, something that very much helps with your grades, I feel, is competition. It's if your friend is doing better than
it's
you,
like it provides a motivation.
how do you know how well your friend's doing if you don't get to see your friend? How do you compete? How do you stay motivated if you're a kid, if you don't have constant attention from other kids, if you don't have constant, oh, you did this well on this test? I want to do better than you. I want to do as well as you.
Yeah, you got a point there.
Yeah, kids need to be in a good environment to learn. Kids need to feel safe. They can't, how are you supposed to learn when you're in a plexiglass wall with a face mask and this and that, and your teacher's wearing a face shield with a mask on,
and you can't hear them. I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, and I can't hear.
That's another
No, I know the
thing.
feeling.
Oh my God.
I have people with like face shields. I was always like, this is the worst way to learn. And it was like on Zoom, but they were still wearing like a mask, and I'm like,
That's so stupid.
yeah.
Oh my God.
We've
I'm like, this is
neglected,
pain.
we've completely neglected one of the most vital parts of our society, and that's education. As much as...
And our future generation with our kids.
No, that's exactly what it is.
It's kind of like...
We don't realize that this could set back this generation for the next 50 years.
It is kind of like how everyone made like those memes about like how, oh, this is our next doctor, like they're not going to know how to do this because they had to stay at home the
Yeah.
whole time. Like my friend who was going to be a nurse, she had to learn how to do an IV. She did it on a stuffed animal at home. I'm like, that's how she learned to do it.
How
on Zoom.
pathetic
Isn't that,
is that? That's
isn't
messed
that,
up.
Isn't that terrible? She had
Like,
to
how
do
are
it
we
by
supposed
herself.
to learn? Like,
No, exactly.
some things just need to be in person. Like, hell, go in the schools with hazmat suits if it has to come down to it, because it's really important for these people to be educated. If you're still going to run classes,
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
That it's very important to a lot of these kids on campuses and stuff. So I guarantee you a bunch of kids would have been willing to take the risk of catching COVID in order to be in person.
yeah, especially when they're not at risk of COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not at the risks of older populations. And, yeah, I was one of those kids where it's like, I'll take the chance. I'll
Yeah,
go in
same.
person.
Still, I'm taking the chance.
Yeah.
I think I probably already got it. I had a really bad cough like 2-3 weeks ago, if you remember. And I was
My-
coughing up mad crap.
Yeah, my family and I have talked about how we've thought we've gotten COVID because we've lost our sense of smell. We've lost our sense of taste at times.
Wow.
My mom tells me that story all the time where she's done that, where she's lost her sense of taste and smell for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden it was just fine. And it's like, yeah, you probably had COVID. You probably had a low, level of COVID, and you got through it.
Yeah, and there's so many people like that. My great aunt, who is a heavy smoker,
Exactly.
was hospitalized, but she didn't have to go through anything like huge. The rest of her family only lost sense of smell,
Yeah.
taste, whatever, so.
There's a good chance we've all had COVID at some point. There's a good chance, well, maybe not all, but a lot of us had some variation of COVID strain, and I think we're okay.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. At least people our age, if they don't know, we're in our 20s, so it's just like...
It's also people older than us are willing to take that risk.
Yeah. And it's like, you know what, I don't advise, like, that 49-year-old guy to really not take the vaccine, but if you want to take that risk, that's on you. Yeah. And I think that's what everybody should be doing. We shouldn't be treating unvaccinated people as second class when, well, apparently, according to the CDC, vaccinated people are also spreading it too. And it's like...
They're just about as likely to spread it as non-vaccinated people.
Right.
So it's like...
It just depends on how it affects them based on if they took the vaccine or not.
So
that's really what it should come down to.
It really should be up to the person and their preference, because if it's not going to help you, if it's not going to help the individual, if it's not going to help society, why are we forcing it? Why are we, yeah, it'll help people not die from it, but if you're willing to take that risk, let the person take that risk.
Yeah. And it's like, what I've always said, and it might sound insensitive, but I've always said survival of the fittest. If they're not fit enough to think, hey, I have diabetes and whatever, but I'll be okay because I'm only 20, 30, 40, I don't have to worry about this, or I'm immunocompromised, but I don't need to take it because I'm so young and I'm very healthy, and then they end up dying. And it's just like, you took that risk.
Well, that's how it was for me. Like, I was able to get the vaccine earlier because I'm technically immunocompromised, and it's like, I just got it because I was like, whatever.
Yeah, and I think I was actually able to get it earlier too because I was a grocery store worker, which is apparently essential. And according to the BMI, I'm obese, so that made me likely too.
BMI is so annoying. BMI just isn't real. It's not right.
It's just outdated. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure health, though. It's hard to measure everybody's individual health.
No, because everybody's different. Everyone has a different genetic makeup,
exactly.
and everyone.
If you feel healthy, you're healthy.
Yeah, if you work out, if you eat the right stuff for the most part,
obviously not fully. You might have cancer and stuff, but you should get checked out when.
I definitely think that should be something we talk about in the future, though, because society makes it like, oh, the skinniest one is the fittest.
Yeah, no. And it's like those people can very much have problems with eating. Those people can have eating disorders to the point where they don't eat. They could have all these kinds. It's
a risk assessment.
You have to know your body. You have to know, exactly. Understand the risks in what you're doing. Understand the benefits in what you're doing. If you're eating an all-healthy diet, you're most likely to have a healthy lifestyle.
To fight back. Like, your immune system is stronger.
Exactly. It's, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
If you eat a bunch of crap, you're going to feel like crap. If you eat a bunch of good foods, you're going to feel great. You're going to feel energized, happy, healthy, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that. It was a part of COVID, what's the term, spread, where it's, if you're, there were certain things that we all could have done that helped us. Vitamin D was attributed to helping in certain aspects.
I thought it was vitamin C, but I could be wrong.
I think
but
it's
a lot
vitamin
a lot of them.
Yeah.
I know the sun's vitamin D, but I don't. Vitamin C's oranges, like orange and all that. But I think that helps with your health a lot.
Yeah,
too.
I think both were very beneficial to helping with.
Oh yeah, and like magnesium. If you have low levels of magnesium, that could make it worse for you. So there's a lot of things. Elderberries is what I like to take, honestly.
Yeah, measuring health, there's so many different things that go into it. Like, you can't just look at a person and be like, yes, they're healthy. There's so many things I feel like going on.
And
they could be skinny, perfect looking, and they could have rotted out intestines. Let's just say,
And that's kind of my point. Was we can't look at other people and say what they need to do. We can't look at other people and say what they need. It's everybody's an individual, and you could
connect that to the vaccines, like how you were saying, talk to your doctor, because they know you the best, probably.
Exactly.
Health-wise.
They also can take tests and see if you're physically capable of getting this vaccine. They can give you suggestions on what to do. If they recommend something other than a vaccine, if you're worried, oh, I've found that this works in my patients, maybe your doctor will give you something that, will actually help and doesn't require you to get a vaccine, doesn't require you to do this and that. So, yeah, it's very much ask your doctor, somebody who knows you, somebody who's capable, and, you know, if you choose not to trust them, go to another person, go to somebody else, and, you know.
Yeah, that's, like you said, the freedom of this country. We
Yes.
can make those decisions, whereas Canada, you can't really choose your doctor. No. You can't really... You're kind of stuck with the person that may have biases towards you, because there are biases everywhere. Exactly. So it's just like, that kind of sucks if you're stuck with the same person, or you have to travel how far for a different doctor.
Yep. And, you know, we need to take advantage of our choice. We need to take advantage of our options, because we do have options in this country. We do have freedoms to say, no, we're not doing that, or yes, I agree with you, we should do that. We need to take advantage of that. We need to accept, you know, our right to that choice. We can't just go along with everything and then get mad at other people for not wanting to go along with what you're going.
Yeah, like, I am very close friends with a pretty older lady named Sue. I think she's got to be in her 50s or 60s, something like that. And she said on Facebook that she completely supports vaccine mandates. And she's an ex-nurse, or maybe she is still a nurse. I don't think she is. I think she's retired or something. Oh. And so I talked to her about it. I'm like, hey, I don't really agree with that, but if you want to get vaccinated for your own health and well-being, do so yourself. I don't really think that we should really be making everybody do so.
Oh, you're saying that she, like, supported, like, forcing it on?
Yeah, the mandates.
Yeah, the mandates, yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm against. I'm not sitting here saying you shouldn't get the vaccine. I'm not sitting here saying you shouldn't have access to it. You shouldn't go get it if you feel that it's your choice. But I'm just mad at the fact that people want to say what you can and cannot do. People want to say, you know, no, you can't do this.
Especially when they're out, like Nancy Pelosi, for example, having that whole...
the dinner party.
Yeah, dinner party, and then Obama with
his birthday party.
Yeah, birthday party. And it's just like, you know what? These are the same people.
It's practice what you preach, you know?
Yeah.
It's rules for thee and but not for me. And it's repulsive, because that's not how our country should be, and we need to speak out about it. That's the reason why I post about this stuff, because I'm mad. I'm mad that these politicians will come out every day and say that you can't do this, you can't even march.
You know what? I will say something from a psychological perspective. I'm sure you've all heard about the study of how people were told by an authority figure to do something, like zap this guy if he gets it wrong. Yep, you guys know. Like everybody knows it, So it's just like, it's human nature to listen to authority figures. Yeah. Hitler was a authority figure. The Nazis probably weren't even bad people. They just listened to an authority figure because, they would lose their job, or they would get killed, or something with their family.
As part of them, they would be, you know, and that's another thing. That's another thing that we've constantly seen, where it's, I'm going to wear my mask even if the CDC recommends that we don't need them, just because I don't want to be labeled as a Republican. I'm going to get my vaccine.
It's kind of everybody, like, putting themselves first, you know?
Yeah.
Like, them, like, I don't know how train of thought went with that, but, with the whole experiment that you were talking about, it's like, well, if this is going to happen for me, but this is going to happen to them, I'm going to take the benefit for me.
Yeah, and that's human nature. That's what we do. We listen to authority figures that tell us what to do. And that's kind of why I'm on this podcast with you too, because I'm like, do what's best for you.
I'm willing to go against what the government says in order to make...
Same.
You know,
even if I end up losing my job, if they want vaccine requirements, I'll just go elsewhere. Yeah. That's the freedom of the country that we have for now.
I'll take the risk, but I need to talk about this. I need a platform to be able to speak on this, because it drives me nuts, and I'm not.
And other people to know that they're not alone.
Exactly. I'm not going to accept this tyrannical rule over our government. I'm not going to just roll over and just say, yeah, whatever you guys say goes, because I don't agree with any of what they're saying, with any of the mandates that they're doing, because if you read the Constitution at all, you're just like...
all you guys should do is just recommend what we should do, and some
no
people will
problem with
take that
recommendations.
recommendation. What if, oh,
Yeah.
my sister died of COVID, I'm going to protect myself because I could die of it too. You know, that's your choice. If you want to wear a mask every time you go out in public, you can do so.
Yeah.
Other countries
Mhm.
have been doing that because of the higher populations like China.
Mhm.
So it's just like, this is what you can do. And other
You have
people
choice.
probably want to do that with you too. And
Mhm.
that's okay. Like, you don't have to feel like the odd one out. Like, you're
Yeah.
just protecting yourself.
Exactly.
Like, that's what you have to do when you're going through, like, chemotherapy. They highly recommend you don't go out. They highly recommend that you wear protection if you have to. I know one of my great aunts who passed away because she didn't go by those rules, which is her choice, but
Mhm.
she is taking that risk, and unfortunately she got sick and died.
Yeah.
So it's just like, what do you do? It's
We-
survival of the fittest. You should make your own risk assessments, and that's your choice.
And my other issue is that not everybody's immune system is the same way, so we can't make a generalization over everybody in order to make sure that everybody is safe. We can give, like, yes, recommendations, I have no problem with it, and I think that the vaccine mandates is what causes a lot of hesitancy. It's
Yeah, and a lot of neurological issues too that have been going on. Guillain-Barré syndrome too is another one. We don't know why it causes it. I've learned in my classes, my biomedical classes, for example, they're like, we don't know why this causes it, but it's such a low number, you don't have to worry about it. Like, that's what I was
Exactly.
told for the flu shot, and I'm just
Mhm.
like, but we should know.
Like, aren't you taught to like question everything?
And I question everything, and a lot of people get pissed at me for doing that.
But I
But
feel like
that's
we were
the
just
point of
taught that
science.
way.
Yeah.
That's the point of science.
That
You
is the
question
point of science.
everything in
And
science.
doctors, I don't know if everybody knows, but doctors were highly, like, that were speaking out against this stuff, were censored a lot when
Oh,
this
yeah.
started. Now they're not so censored
Hundreds
anymore.
of doctors
So
being
more
taken
doctors
down
are coming
off,
out.
Yeah, hundreds of doctors being taken down off YouTube and this and that for
Yep.
pushing certain drugs. And I'm not going to say.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, they're doctors. They
The
should
podcast.
voice their opinion.
Yeah.
They're not even opinion, educated opinion.
Well, that was a great conversation. I'm very glad that you guys all joined. I want to thank my two co-hosts for joining me today.
Thank you for
Sarah.
having
Thank
me.
you.
Join us next Friday at 1 p.m. if you liked our podcast. And like, subscribe, or share if you enjoy our podcast and feel that others should see it too. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys next week.